What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video from the 10-7 MMA channel. And this video is going to be full coverage on the entire Frankie Edgar situation with BKFC, Dave Feldman, and also, of course, tangentially related to Conor McGregor. I wanted to go over this entire story. Actually, I was going back and forth on whether or not I wanted to cover it because it's a bummer of a story. But after watching some more videos on the topic, listening to Frankie Edgar's interview, I just felt like I had to say what I need to say. And we're going to focus on a couple different points. Okay, two primary points. So the first point that I'm going to touch upon and focus on is this is a major problem for BKFC that this happened, that things unfolded the way that they did, because I think it really hurts their credibility. And I'm going to talk about that as well, because I do have experience with smaller promotions, regional MMA promotions. Obviously, BKFC is much bigger and has a much bigger valuation, but I understand that not everything goes perfectly. Ticket sales can fall short. There can be money shortages. They're trying to grow. They're trying to probably spend a ton of money marketing. So I understand that. But what happened here seems like a major financial mismanagement. And then if you take into consideration all the risks that David Feldman has taken on, mortgaging his house, risking everything on the business, it's admirable, it's honorable, but it's kind of putting the cart before the horse. And it seems that that precedent that he set of just fake it till you make it, apparently, is what's happening. It seems to have caught up with him this time. Couldn't make it. Couldn't make up the funds and had to eventually cut Frankie Edgar. And on top of that, he lied about it. He lied about it to the public. And look, I know promoters lie, and I understand that, but these lies are, I think it's potentially defamation. Now, I'm sure Frankie Edgar, when he took the payment money, the settlement money, he probably signed a waiver saying that he wouldn't sue for anything, any reason. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. So one thing we're going to talk about is this debacle, what it says about BKFC. We're also going to contrast it to the UFC. They don't have issues like this. As much as people want to get on the UFC about fighter pay, raising pay, they're ripping off fighters. We don't ever see fighters just not getting paid or getting pulled off a fight for no reason at the last minute. So I think you need to give credit where credit is due in the UFC. Whether or not you think they're paying enough or not enough, they're reliable. They sign a contract. Both parties agree. It's a real business. So we have to give credit where credit's due. The second thing I want to focus on today, as well as all this stuff happened on the heels of Ariel interviewing Derek Moneyberg, is I do feel like people are getting aggravated in the community. And by the way, I'm saying this is a massive Ariel Helwani fan. I listen to his show every week. He does the best interviews on the planet. He is a storyteller for the sport of mixed martial arts. He's one of the key people that has built this sport up. So I don't want to get it twisted. I'm a huge fan of Ariel. And like I said, I watch the show constantly. But this is one of those moments that I have mentioned in previous videos where I think people are getting riled up because of this whole narrative that Ariel continues to cling to about being a journalist. And basically, it's like he uses that as justification for when he wants to ask tough questions, when he wants to release information. I'm just doing my job. I'm a journalist, and these are the ethics and the codes that I that I follow when I do my job, and that's all I care about. But then in this case, okay, we see a massive miscarriage of justice to a fighter, the people that he proclaims to protect all the time, but he doesn't really do anything. He doesn't drill down on it, and he had an opportunity and he barely asked any questions. And I'm going to contrast that with the Derek Moneyberg interview, where he goes in on Derek Moneyberg hardcore and grills him, and most people probably say rightfully so. But where is that energy when it really counts? Where is that energy when somebody has been basically scammed out of, it sounds like, $800,000 or $900,000? It sounds like they did a bunch of promotion, all these other things for what? But where's the interrogation then? So we're going to go through all of these different elements, and it's a sad story, but I think one that does need exploration. That's why we're doing it. So let's get into it. We're going to start at the top when Ariel had Dave Feldman on his show, I think about 3 weeks ago, to talk about the fight and talk about the Frankie Edgar situation, because he had been hearing rumors that Frankie Edgar had been pulled from the card. So this is Dave Feldman explaining what was potentially about to happen to Frankie Edgar. Now, mind you, we know now that what David Feldman here was saying was a lie. It's kind of crazy. As I mentioned, promoters do lie, get that, but this is a pretty bad lie, because again, I think it borders on defamation. Actually, it doesn't even border on defamation. I think it is defamatory, and I'll explain why in a second. Check this out.
How do you come to the determination that, okay, we are comfortable with having someone of his age and what happened recently to him with his fights fighting on this card?
I think, you know, he had to pass the medicals. He had to do everything that the state required. I did watch him spar actually in person, and I was confident that he could fight at this level.
Okay.
Definitely.
And so
I was.
and he has to pass like tests and stuff like that,
Yeah,
right?
there's more medicals for someone in a high risk category than there is for a guy that's not in a high risk category, and he passed every medical.
I will be honest with you. I heard that his status on the card is up in the air. Is he fighting on Saturday?
We'll determine that later on today. There is a potential medical issue with him.
Okay.
And we're not exactly sure, and we will determine that later on today.
So you'll know for sure by
Yes,
the end of today.
by the end of
Okay.
today.
What are you
Yep.
feeling? What are you thinking?
It's a coin toss.
Coin toss.
Yeah.
Is there a replacement on deck?
Yes.
Okay. Who is the replacement?
The replacement is a kid out of Montana that just won by knockout on the Sturgis card, Timmy Mason.
Okay.
Awkward, good puncher, rough, tough kid. It'll be a good fight.
If
Won't be obviously as big a name as Frankie
Sure.
Edgar, but definitely a very respectable fight.
if the Frankie fight doesn't go through, would you like to have him on, or would this in the future, or would this preclude him from fighting again in BKFC?
I really, really like Frankie Edgar.
Yeah.
Like, I met him. He's a cool dude. He's real. He's one of the realest guys I've ever met.
Yeah.
In
Legend.
in fighting. I mean, but being a legend, you would never know he's a legend by
Sure.
the way he acts. He's just awesome. So the answer is yes. We just want to make sure every obstacle is cleared.
It's really messed up when you think about it now that essentially nothing he's saying there is true. The reason why I say that it could be defamatory is because if he's saying that he has a medical issue when it's absolutely not true, that could jeopardize him if he wants to take fights later on. Be like, wait a minute, BKFC said you had a problem, or their medical staff said that you had publicly that you had a medical problem. We can't have you fight because it's too much of a risk. It's too much of a liability. That could be a major financial loss. I'm not saying Frankie Edgar wants to fight. You're going to hear from him in a second saying that this was basically it. He doesn't want to fight anymore. But you can see how there is a potential for damages from these statements. Very shocking, because I'm actually a big fan of Dave Feldman. His story is incredible. What he's built is awesome. I know Jeff Houston at BKFC, the ring announcer. He's a legend. It's amazing what they're doing. And at Fusion Fight League, we have bare knuckle fights. They're really, really fun to watch, action-packed, just nonstop back and forth. It's a brutal but amazing sport with a whole new set of strategies. And anyway, so I'm a fan of Dave Feldman. It really bums me out that this has happened and that he felt that he needed to lie, I guess. Maybe he felt the real reason would hurt the credibility of the organization too much is trying to grow. I don't know. I'm not trying to make excuses, but this is just speculation. I'd like to believe that he must be an upstanding person in order to even build the organization to where it's at now. Anyways, now we're going to get into Frankie Edgar's statements here, and he's going to say what happened from his perspective is crazy, is in complete contrast to what Dave Feldman just said on Ariel's show. Check this out.
Newark.
Yeah, so I was supposed to fight, obviously, BKFC October 4th this past weekend. And I was training. I got for 6 to 7 weeks. I got a week out from the fight, and we get an email, or my manager, Ali, gets an email from someone from BKFC stating that the owner of BKFC is leaving for Manchester. He doesn't have a phone on him. He can't call you, but he'll call you eventually. But in the meantime, his doctor recommended I don't fight based on my age, consecutive TKO losses, my layoff, and my record, which sounds fugazi. And that was before he even seen my medicals, this doctor, or anything, which is kind of crazy. And the fact that he set me up a week before the fight, obviously we signed the deal months ago. So like all those facts were known much before we signed that deal. And not to mention that I passed every single one of my medicals. I did a whole shit ton of medicals.
Okay? I mean, I talk to you pretty much every day, and
right.
it was a little annoying to you that you were running around
every day I was going to medical. So
doing a shitload of medicals.
I'm gonna tell you, I got a physical, I got a blood test, I got an eye exam. Then I had to go to 3 different heart things. I went to a stress test, an echo test, and a carotid test. 3 different appointments. Then I also went to a neurologist. I got an MRI and an MRA. Now, every single doctor said my stuff was great.
Eye doctor, too,
all right?
Right?
Eye doctor, yep. Eye doctor as well. Now, the promotion.
I got to stop this for a second. I'm thinking about this as I'm listening, and It actually sounds worse and worse. So I mentioned the defamation issue, right? If his doctor did come out and eventually, if they were able to convince Frankie Edgar that this was true and say, hey, like, yeah, our doctors looked at everything and we decided it's a medical problem and you're not able to fight due to medical reasons after he passes all these medicals. Not only is that defamation, I think that they were trying to get out from underneath their payment obligation completely, because if it's for a medical reason, that's due to the commission. That has nothing to do technically with the contract falling apart and them not meeting the terms of the contract. So why would they have to pay him the purse, let alone any sort of compensation? See, this almost sounds like attempted fraud, because he tried to get Frankie Edgar to believe that he was precluded from fighting for a medical reason, but Frankie realized that was not the case. Okay, let's listen more to what he has to say here. Luckily, I know he probably has Ali as his manager. Ali's well-versed in the game, so we'll continue to hear the story. But that just popped in my mind. Like, this is a much bigger deal than I originally thought as I was putting together all the footage. This is an attempted fraud.
Was trying to say they weren't getting my medicals, which is bullshit. They got all my medicals. So we sent them the medicals. Now, they did not send my medicals to the commission.
That's the most
at all.
That's the most
at all.
part.
And I'm talking to someone at the commission. He's like, we don't have your medicals. So like, what do you mean you can't fight? We don't have your medicals. They're the ones that the commission, right? So I gathered all my medicals and I gave them to them. And actually, I got a call from someone there, and they said I had the doctor from the commission look at your medicals, and he's like, you look fucking fantastic. That's what he said to me. This is recently. This is after I knew the fact I wasn't fighting. He's like, your MRI hasn't changed since 2021. You have no white brain matter. That's what they look for. That I guess signifies like, damage or whatnot. He's seen none of that. And he even said, he's like, I don't know if you're planning on doing anything, but you can tell your wife and family you got a clean bill of health if you chose to fight more. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I'll be honest, I'm not thinking of that at all. Right. I'm so like, this left such a bad taste in my mouth because number one, I was not thinking about fighting, okay? They came to me. I ignored them once. Then they come to me again. Then Ali talks with, the owner. They come up with a deal. He gave me a number. It was a fucking pretty high number. I said no. They came back and gave me the number that I would do it for, which was a very significant amount of money, right? That's the only fucking reason I got off the couch. Now, granted, once I got we woke up the beast, that's all I wanted to do was fight. It wasn't about the money. I wanted to fight. But I mean, I'm not going to do it for nothing either. So now, why did they do this to me? Now, I could speculate, and that's all I could really do is speculate. Right? Either they knew this from the get-go, which I don't want to say that, but who knows? You know what I mean? And now, in retrospect, I look back like they took forever to get my medicals done. They were trying to tell me I had to go to New York to get my medicals. But I'm like, what do you mean I have to go to New York? I've been getting my medicals 20. The fight's in New Jersey, number one, and I've been getting my medicals 20 years in New Jersey for every fight I have ever done anywhere. And then even when I started doing the test, they were like, we can't find a neurologist in New Jersey. I'm like, what? I found one right away. Found a neurologist. Then as soon as I made that neurology appointment, which later I found out I didn't even need to do for the commission. Didn't even need to do it. But I did it anyway. And then when I made that neurology appointment, I get a call back saying from my management team, because they're talking to the promotion, saying, oh, you have to go to another neurologist and you're only in New York. So I'm like, what? What are you talking? Like, what do you mean? So I never even went to that appointment because it was bullshit. I think their doctor wanted to see me so they could tell me I wasn't fit to fight, And yeah, it's just okay. Or they didn't sell enough tickets, right? And they figured, let's get one of the highest paid guys on the card and get him off the card. We don't have to pay him. Or they lost like a sponsor. These are all speculations. Now we're past the point. They're paying me something pretty much so I don't sue them. Right. Okay. If they do pay me, if they don't pay me, I'm going to be suing them. They're paying me something. Obviously not my purse. They're paying me something to kind of compensate me for my training camp and whatnot.
Okay. So there's the breakdown. Man, the more I listen to it, all the weird things, him trying to get him to see a doctor in New York, a neurologist in New York that he said weren't even needed, them not sending the stuff to the commission. Like, how premeditated was this? The more I think about it, Was it just an afterthought once they didn't sell enough tickets? Because I think that's the allegation, that they didn't sell enough tickets. So let's go through the range of speculations here that are possible. One, it was very late in the game that they realized they couldn't afford him anymore. I think Ariel says that he had something in the 7 figures, so in the millions of dollars that he was getting paid. They realized they couldn't pay him. They tried to make up an excuse, pull him off the card. He didn't fall for it, this medical nonsense. And then they had to pay him some compensation just to make sure he didn't sue. So I'm sure they signed an NDA, all this stuff. The other option is that they knew the fight was in New Jersey. They knew he could promote the heck out of it, and he would bring a bunch of people and sell a lot of tickets. And they felt that, but they still couldn't afford that payment. And so they're like, all right, we're going to set this. We're going to let him go do all his promotion stuff. Because I heard that he did all these like promotion events. He had like, he organized a watch party, all these different things to basically drum up some excitement for the BKFC event. So he did all of this. And was it maybe that they said, okay, we're going to have you do all of this, thinking right in the back of their mind, but once the fight actually happens, we're going to pull him and we're still going to reap the benefits of the promotion, which would be even darker. Now these are, and maybe there's some in between possibility that happened as well. But man, the more I think about it, even if he signed a settlement agreement, if there's a potential of fraud here, that this was premeditated, or they did try and scam him, or they did try and make it so that he felt he couldn't fight because of a medical reason, which would probably make it mean that he wouldn't have to be paid anything per the contract. That's a big deal, and he might still have legal recourse. This is really, really bad, the more that I think about it. And I'm even more shocked now that I think about it in full context that Ariel didn't go crazy on Dave Feldman or this organization, that they tried to scam Frankie Edgar. That's what I'm thinking is what happened. Now, in the best case scenario, it's a scam because of what they tried to do with the medicals, the fact that they didn't send the commission. What's going on? That's crazy. All right. Wow. Okay. Getting me excited, heated up here as I'm watching this. Now we're going to get to Ariel's show where he explains what happened after the fact, after he kind of realized what happened. And this was his response. It was a very mild-mannered response. Check this out.
And there is a moment where I do ask Conor McGregor about the Frankie Edgar situation, because I had heard, and again, this was shot on the night, I had heard that it was a ticket issue. They did not sell as many tickets as they had hoped. I had asked around about it. I saw sections tarped off, and my understanding was Frankie was, the agreement was that he was going to get paid a pretty good amount of money. I heard 7 figures. I heard it was the highest payday of his career, and that's why he took it. And it makes sense. And then they didn't sell the tickets, and they didn't meet their marks, and so they offered him X amount, very low 6 figures, to just kind of walk away. And he said no, and then he pushed back, and they came to another agreement for a higher number, but nowhere near what he was going to make. And he passed everything, what I was told. And ultimately, they had to make that financial decision. I wish they would have just come out and said that. They did not, and they pinned it on his, history, medical, all that stuff, getting knocked out. The truth is, they knew all of this when they signed him. And what I was told was he passed everything, and there were no red flags. And he is upset that they're pinning it on this. And I can understand that. And so, yeah, that's not great. That is not great. And they're still trying to figure things out. Look, their Triller ownership has been called into question. The future has been called into question. This is not a BKFC like puff piece propaganda. They didn't pay us to do this. This is going to be my look at like, what is this? And it was also my first time at a BK.
Okay. It's not great. More that I think about it, this is I think this might be potentially attempted fraud. This is not just not great. This is a horrible thing that has happened. And on top of that, like I said, they're messing with Frankie Edgar's reputation. I think they tried to snake out of having to pay anything. That's wild. And that's Ariel's reaction. So this brings me to the second point, as I mentioned at the top of the video. And look, I'm not trying to beat up on Ariel too much here, because I'm just calling it like I see it. And I'll say it one more time. I'm a massive fan of Ariel Helwani. I listen to his show every week, does the best interviews in the game. But what I think I'm noticing, what other fans are noticing, what people are getting aggravated by, I'm going to show a clip of MMA Joey later on today. He kind of explains this as well. But it's the selective utilization of "I'm a journalist" card when Ariel wants to ask tough questions, when Ariel wants to go after people. I'm doing my job. I'm a journalist. And he uses that. But then in other cases, when he chooses not to go after people, even when it's merited, because he has a relationship or a friendship or whatnot, he doesn't. But so then where's the journalism degree? Then where's the talk about Syracuse University? Now, I think it's totally fine that Ariel, who, if he has a relationship with Dave Feldman or Conor McGregor, if he chooses not to ask certain questions because of the relationship, I actually don't have a problem with it, because that's his show. He can do what he wants. Those are his friends. We all do this. We all have people that we care about that maybe do things that we're not always thrilled about, and then we're not always proud of, as our friends or family or whatever, but we don't necessarily want to grill them because we care about them. We understand they make mistakes, and I get that. I think the problem that people have is he'll play that journalism card, but he deploys it selectively. So what does it really mean then? So you're a journalist when you want to go after somebody, when you have a frayed relationship, but that doesn't, it's not the same thing when you have a good relationship. I think that's the issue. And I know hypocrisy is kind of a strong word, but that's, I think, what people are picking up on and what people sometimes get aggravated by. It's that selective deployment. It's happening right here. And it's really a shock, because if you think about it, this is 10,000 times worse than these issues of fighter pay for the UFC, because at least in their case, they have an agreement, they sign a contract, and they deliver. I don't ever hear of any situations where they're for non-payment, or they're trying to retract payment, or try and claim some medical excuse and not pay somebody. We don't hear that in the UFC. It's happening here. Potential fraud. So anyways, now let's move on to the next clip. We're going to show a contrast of Ariel's reaction involving fighter pay, involving somebody not getting their purse. Different situation. Okay, it's Wonderboy coming in when he was supposed to fight Michel Pereira. Pereira came in overweight. Wonderboy elected not to fight, and I think Wonderboy did not get his purse, which was supposed to be like $250,000 or maybe even above that. Obviously, Wonderboy's an OG popular fighter, and Ariel went crazy about it. Okay, but this is a completely different situation, and a way better situation, because it's probably in the contract that if you choose not to fight, they don't have to pay you. They probably can, and they have done that before. They paid Beneil Dariush before when his opponent was switched to another fight. And I don't know, I bet you they didn't even have to pay him, but they still paid him his show money. So the UFC will do that. But anyways, just think about how he talked about with Dave Feldman, this is not good. And then how he goes crazy about Stephen Wonderboy. And at least in Stephen Wonderboy's case, he could have chosen to fight. I'm not saying he should have. He could have chosen to fight and still gotten paid, but he opted not to because he felt it was unfair, which I totally understand. Okay. But to me, the BKFC case is 10 times worse because of the defamation, because of the potential fraud. But he doesn't have much to say there. This is what he has to say here. Check this out. And he goes in, obviously, against on Dana White, frayed relationship.
If you think for a second that paying Wonderboy just his show, or 50%, or whatever they agree to, whatever it is, 2 weeks ago, is sinking them when they have already allotted, they already have the budget figured out. So they know if this guy wins, it's going to be this. If this guy wins, it's going to be this. If this guy loses, it'll be this. To walk away with zero, or to be told, hey, if you're making, entry level stuff, we'll pay you. But if you're a vet who's never missed weight, who's only been a model fighter / employee / whatever you want to call it, independent contractor, nah. You can't pick and choose, is total hogwash. Let's continue.
Guy was 3 pounds overweight, whatever it was. You get a piece of his purse if you take the fight. But if you decide you don't want to take the fight, we also offered him another fight.
Pause it right there.
There's a much
this to
bigger
me blows
story.
me away. To just dismiss the 3 pounds like it's nothing is so insensitive to fighters.
Now, by the way, I get what Ariel's saying, that the 3 pounds makes a difference. I know we hear the statistic that most of the time the fighters that miss weight, they're the ones that win. But it doesn't. That's an unfair way to position it, because you can say that after the fact, but that's been the predetermined mechanism by which to remedy this wrong. So if people come in overweight, that's the remedy. You get a part of their purse. You can still opt not to fight, but that's what's built in. That's what's been agreed upon. So to now come and say after the fact that this is an insufficient mechanism, maybe, but you can't cry a river at this point once the contract has been negotiated and both parties have agreed to those terms. I think it's pretty unfair the way that he's harping on this point. But again, this is the difference that we see when Ariel's criticizing somebody that he has no relationship with or a negative relationship with versus somebody that he's friends with. And lastly, I'll say, like, I don't necessarily fault him for that in the void. If you're just a YouTuber, you're just doing your thing and making fun content, of course you're gonna have relationships and you can be biased, and that's fine. But it's just where we run into the issue is with this idea of I'm a journalist and that card allows me to ask whatever I want and release whatever I want, etc. But then it's not real because it's, as I mentioned, selectively deployed.
You show up and make weight. If the 3 pounds meant nothing, then why do we strip Charles Oliveira? If the 3 pounds mean nothing, why do we even have weight classes? Let's just agree upon like some random weight. You can't just dismiss that. Wonderboy showed up. He was the professional. He made weight. The other guy didn't. And then you say he gets a percentage of the purse. Yeah, that's in the contract. Great. Okay. It's a percentage of the purse. How much is it? 10K? 20K? Really? For a guy who's 40 years old and is making $250,000, if that's what it is, that's not, you're still having to fight the guy and you still lose and you still get the L and you still go backwards and you still lose out on opportunities X, Y, and Z. So to say, oh yeah, you're just going to get a penalty from the guy and that will be all well and good, that's ridiculous. He wants it to be fair. And he showed up and made weight. It should be, if you show up and step on that scale and make weight, you are entitled to X amount if your opponent doesn't make weight.
Okay. So again, just showcasing the massive outrage in that case, which I think was a far better situation for Wonderboy than it is here for Frankie Edgar. And once again, he goes off on that so heavily, so hard because Ariel, as he always says, I care about the fighters. This is coming from a good place. Here's a clip where he says exactly that to Michael Chandler. Check this out. This is after the Paramount deal was signed and the UFC is getting, $1.1 billion per year. And Ariel, of course, coming to the defense of fighters. Listen to what he has to say here.
More money.
Okay, so I'm on the record. I said it at the beginning of today's show. Like, I think it's a huge win for Paramount. It makes all the sense in the world. They get this content. They get to own the sport. I also think it's a huge win for the fans. It's much cheaper now to be a fan. The best of the UFC was behind a paywall. Not necessarily the case. If you're an NFL fan, NBA fan, you don't have to pay extra to watch the Super Bowl, NBA Finals. It should be that way as well if you want to be a mainstream sport. So that makes sense. UFC obviously made all this money, highest deal they've ever made. It's like, it's a no-brainer. The one concern for me, if you don't mind me saying, are the fighters, are you guys. And I come from a positive place. You know this, right? Like, I care about the fighters and I want you guys to make the most amount of money as possible. And so could I ask, and I know these aren't necessarily, you're not a UFC representative per se, but I appreciate that you're willing to talk about these things. Could I ask, do you think that because now the UFC is making so much more, that will lead to maybe like higher bonuses, 50 to 100, let's just say, or a higher sort of like entry level pay, not 10 and 10, maybe 20, 20. Do you think there'll be a trickle down effect to the fighters because this price tag has been so high?
Okay, so there it is. Ariel cares about the fighters. Actually, on second thought, I'm like, why are you even asking Michael Chandler or a fighter about this? They have no idea. Why even speculate? Like, I could potentially, I don't know, get them in trouble with the UFC or say so. I don't even know why he's asking that. But again, this is Ariel saying that same thing he said a million times. I care about the fighters. I'm just trying to protect the fighters. That's all I'm doing here. I'm sticking up for them against the big bad UFC. Well, now in this next clip, oh, sorry, actually it's coming up later. But again, it's this idea of, yes, I'm here. I'm defending the fighters. I'm going to go against the UFC. I'm not afraid of them. But that's not the full story. MMA Joey, I think, explains in the next two clips very clearly why maybe not everybody, maybe not even most people, but some of us feel there's some incongruence here. Check this out.
The reason Ariel he has some credibility, okay? But the reason his credibility is so shot with the MMA community is because now when he criticizes Dana White in the UFC, it's essentially only because they kicked him to the curb.
One more clip, again, talking about his credibility.
There's times where I 100% agree with him. I've defended him. I've been called an Ariel fanboy before. I think he does the best interviews. But at the end of the day, his credibility all depends on who he's actually talking to. Because he doesn't care as long as you're his friend. He doesn't care what you do as long as you're his friend. He's going to promote BKFC, and as long as you help monetarily benefit him, he will sweep it under the rug. He will cover it up. Because you know what I did? And this is the last thing we'll check out. I went on Uncrowned. I couldn't find a single article about Frankie Edgar. I couldn't find one. I went to his YouTube channel. You know how they clip out videos? Couldn't find a single one because he only talked about it for 30 seconds and pivoted to his documentary each and every time.
So that's the point is, again, you can do whatever you want. It's your show. You can have relationships with people and choose not to go at them. I have no problem with that. People do that all the time. You got your co-hosts or whatever people that you like that you come bring on as guests. You don't want to attack them. You don't have to attack them. It's your prerogative. It's your show. He's built a massive following and he's an OG of the sport. But it's the notion that then he tries to hide behind that card, that ace card, like, hey, well, I can ask this question. I can do what I want. I can release this information because I'm a journalist. But then when you do it selectively, it doesn't really hold any water. That's where people, I think, are caught off guard and are kind of, scratching their head and thinking, what's just happened here? I thought you said you're going to do all the stuff. You're going to grill people. You're going to ask the tough questions because you did it to this other guy, the guy you don't like, but you didn't do it because you didn't like him. You did it because that's your job, but then you're not doing it here. What's happening? So that's where we have this incongruence. And that's where I think people are getting a bit confused with how he's carrying himself. Now, case in point, this is the wrong title. Now, case in point, here's an opportunity that Ariel has to ask the tough questions, okay, to Conor McGregor right here. He knew what happened with Frankie Edgar. He knows the situation. He has the chance to grill Conor. Let's see what happens here.
For me personally, Frankie would have been well able for this. It was the BKFC doctors that done it overall and partnered with the commission. Safety is paramount. At this juncture, we want to be correct, You've got to be, safety is paramount.
Okay, because I'll tell you, when he said on my show about the safety, some people were hitting me up refuting what he said. So that's why I wanted.
Frankie was refuting it.
People close to him.
I don't know. Yeah, people close to him.
Saying it was a ticket thing.
Some people close to the fighter themselves can have ulterior motives.
Yeah.
And that can be sad sometimes. Frankie's a grown man. Listen, there's something here for Frankie for sure. He's an absolute legend in the sport, in fighting. And he's huge in New Jersey, and we have a big base in New Jersey. We're going to do something with Frankie. I'd love it. I'd love to get him a chance to compete. He could probably compete against this guy.
Yeah.
Mason might be a better match.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Dude, he had the chance right there. I don't know if Conor is lying or if he was told the same thing that everybody else was. So he may have been lied to by Dave Feldman and is just parroting that lie. I have no idea what exactly his involvement is in terms of the intricacies of the organization. I don't know. But that was a perfect opportunity for Ariel to go in on him right there, and he easily could have, and he has in recent interviews. I'm going to show one right now where he grills the crap out of somebody, but he chose not to. Says he cares about the fighter pay and how much they're making, all this stuff. Frankie was basically just scammed, basically defamed, saying that he has medical issues. Conor's now continuing that lie. He doesn't dive in. Again, that's Ariel's prerogative, but that's not what we see when Ariel chooses to go in on somebody. Check out this Derek Moneyberg interview that I'm going to play now. Now you can see an example of Ariel not holding back, grilling somebody that I think most people applauded because they're like, well, this guy deserves to be grilled. Okay, sure. But I think that the reason why Ariel was going in on him is not because he deserved to be grilled. I think BKFC needs to be talked to about this a little bit more. But why did Ariel feel so comfortable and confident going after Derek Moneyberg? My assumption is because he associates with people that Ariel already doesn't like. I think that Derek Moneyberg is somebody that doesn't have much friends or support in the MMA community. So it's easy to score on him, to dunk on him, to make him look silly, to grill the heck out of him because it doesn't affect him. It just earns him bonus points. So you see, again, the selective journalism card is being played right here. Check this out.
Gordon Ryan. Gordon's a good friend of mine. When I roll with Gordon, he fucks me up in about a minute, in about a minute. Gordon's amazing.
Should a black belt be beat up in a minute by another?
By the best guy in the world
but I'm
ever.
Just saying,
Get the hell out of here.
Black belt versus black belt.
If he beats me up in a minute.
It's such an unfair question. Oh, like all black belts are the same. We see this happening all the time in the UFC. We see a black belt go up against another black belt with somebody who's been a black belt for like 10 years or somebody who just got their black belt, and they'll get submitted very quickly. So you're saying, oh, yeah, you're a black belt. You should have a chance against Gordon Ryan. Are you kidding me? So any black belt versus black belt is going to have a great shot against Gordon Ryan. Like, that's such an insincere question. Ariel should know. And also, this guy's 46. Come on. Look, I don't know much about Derek Moneyberg, but I do feel like he really went at him very aggressively, a bit unfairly, because I'm sure he doesn't care. He knows it's all just bonus points. Everybody hates Derek Moneyberg, so it's easy to go in on him. But yeah, he does this to this guy. And then what does he do to Dave Feldman and Conor McGregor? He had that chance to stick up for Frankie Edgar. He didn't do it. But anyways, listen to a little bit more of him just grilling the heck out of Moneyberg.
I don't know what he'd do to you, but it wouldn't.
I would never
it wouldn't take a
even-
minute. It wouldn't take a minute.
I would have a negative white belt if I went in there. I have no
Okay.
skills whatsoever when it comes to this, but I'm not parading around with a black belt and trying to defend.
I'm not parading anything. I don't give a
It's a
shit
big
what the
deal.
public thinks about my
I
black
mean, there
belt.
was
the coaches that trained
posts
with me
online.
know.
Yeah.
The coaches that trained with me know. The people that matter know. And the people that don't know, it's not my job to satisfy every critic and hater in the world.
That's fair.
I don't. You know what?
don't care what
Critics
people
don't
think.
get paid much.
You don't care what people think. So can I
Why
ask?
should I care what Why would I care what a random person thinks?
Okay, so then that's you should be that way. Why, when I go on your Instagram, do you have like 40, 50,000 likes but 100 comments? That would suggest to me that a lot of those likes are bought, and that would suggest to me that you do care what people think if you're buying those likes.
You know, marketing is marketing. You market your show the way you want to, and I'll market my brand the way that I want
That's
to.
100%. But you just said you don't care. So then why would you buy?
You're changing the
engagement?
context, and you just changed the context 3 different ways.
How?
So we were talking about Mikey, which I was going to clarify and say the last word here, and I'll do that, and then we'll carry on as you wish. But Mikey and I are good. I said I don't think it's fair to be held to that standard that I'm supposed to beat world champions. I never trained to be a pro fighter. I'm not a pro fighter. I'm a hobbyist fighter. I train for self-defense. I'd be very effective in those areas. Mikey and I are good. So shout out to Mikey, respect to Mikey.
Darth Rigatoni.
Okay, so there's the example. There's how Ariel goes in at him. You even see he sets a trap. He sets a trap. Oh, so you don't care about what people. That's great that you don't care about what people think. But then until Derek confirms, yes, I don't care. Why should I care? That's very good. That's very good. But then you have this type of engagement that suggests that you buy likes. That suggests that you do care what people think. Like he set a trap. And props to him. That was a crafty trap that he set. But this is the type of things that he does in this situation. And he didn't do any of that when he was with Feldman or Conor McGregor. So anyways, there's the whole breakdown. There's my 2 cents in terms of the BKFC event, Ariel's coverage of it, and this whole idea of the journalism card, when to play it, when to hold on to it. And that's everything. Let me sum it up in the following way. I think this needs to be talked about way more because not only did they do Frankie dirty, but they tried to do him way dirtier. I think they tried to get away with paying him nothing or maybe paying him less than what they did. But once he didn't fall for that medical excuse nonsense, he probably demanded something more substantial with the help of Ali, and they got him something hopefully like around 200,000 or something to do nothing, which is, okay. But I still think they should be investigated as, was this a premeditated fraud that they tried to perpetrate? That's a big deal. The other tangential point is everybody talking so negatively, beating up on the UFC for fighter pay, this and that. But at the end of the day, you can at least say that the UFC will deliver what it is contractually obligated to deliver. They sign the dotted line. They pay fighters. They're not pulling fighters off cards and trying to make up medical excuses. I've never heard of that happening in my experience. You could tell me if I'm wrong, but it's a totally different thing. And I think they should be given credit for that. Now, whether or not you agree or disagree with the percentage of the revenue or profits that they pay out to fighters, that's a conversation for a different day. And I do want to answer that question. I want to do a full investigative report on exactly how, because I believe that the UFC has all sorts of costs and expenses that we don't realize. Marketing expenses that the NFL, the NBA doesn't have to have the same levels of cost, because UFC and MMA are still growing. And I think it's going to be the biggest sport on the planet one day. But anyways, totally different structure, totally different costs. And I'm going off on a tangent, but it's a much more complex issue. And coming back to my main point, I think the UFC should be given credit here. This is an opportunity to say, hey, it's a reliable organization. Can they do better? Sure. Can everybody do better? Absolutely. But we need to give credit where credit's due. And last but not least, I want to end on a positive here. Once again, I do want to give Ariel a ton of credit for all the great interviews that he does. And it's not even about grilling people. I don't even care when he grills people. I just like the smart questions that he asks, when he knows to dig deeper, when he knows not to talk too much. That's a true art. When he knows when to be silent and just let the fighters tell their stories, or just prod a little bit to get some more interesting tidbits and facts about the fighters, so we as fans can get to know them. This is a very small part of what he does when he goes after people and grills people. But I think it is, I hate to say it, but I think it's worth noting because it colors his criticism of the UFC. I think he goes a little bit too hard against the UFC, and this is a perfect illustration of that, where he's going at them, I think, partially because it's maybe deserved to some extent, or, you know, hey, we need critics. We need people to look under the hood and actually pay attention to what's going on for the betterment of everybody. But he had an opportunity to do it here and he chose not to. So is the criticism against the UFC a little bit exaggerated because he has a negative relationship, just like the criticism of Conor and Dave Feldman is substantially subdued because he has a good relationship? I don't know. These are questions that I think are worthwhile asking, but that's how it appears to me. So anyways, there's my 2 cents, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you guys so much for joining. We appreciate all your support on the channel. We are having a blast talking about MMA, talking about this world, this amazing sport, and this company that's on the rise. Thank you guys so much for joining. We'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.